In this lesson, we will discuss legal chain of custody versus medical break glass. While a medical break glass policy might be necessary, it shatters the requirement of a legal chain of custody when it is related to forensic evidence collected during a sexual assault exam. In the healthcare industry, medical break glass refers to a quick and secure means for a person who does not have access privileges to certain information to gain access when necessary. Medical break glass policy is typically based on pre-stage emergency user accounts managed and distributed in a manner that makes them available without administrative delay. To cite an example, medical break glass, sometimes known as break the glass, is an alert in an electronic health record that pops up when a clinician or an end user tries to access a patient's chart that is considered restricted. Some examples of restricted patients include government officials, celebrities, hospital employees, inmates, and psychiatric patients. When an end user breaks the glass, their supervisor is notified and the end user's activity is automatically logged. Access is immediately granted under monitored conditions. Usually, the end user is required to document the reason why they are trying to access the patient's chart along with the EHR/EMR password. The medical break glass solution includes usernames and passwords for one-time use that permit system access in emergency circumstances. But the key requirement of HIPAA is that policies for a clear audit trail be established to track electronic PHI access. Typically, a medical break glass warning alert screen is presented to the user, and any inappropriate use, e.g., illegal review of a celebrity's electronic PHI, is monitored and recorded. Electronic health records and electronic medical records, by design, are a controlled data distribution system. This can be especially problematic when the forensic images and/or video may be used in a legal setting that requires all forensic evidence to be protected through a legal chain of custody. If forensic images and video are stored in a cloud-based, local EHR/EMR system, then every user that can initiate a medical break glass policy can essentially access the forensic evidence stored within. This user list can also get very extensive and may render the images unusable, inadmissible, if they are ever challenged in court. Unlike medical records, forensic evidence is held to a much more stringent level of access control. To maintain a legal chain of custody, you must preserve evidence from the time it is collected to the time it is presented in court. To prove the legal chain of custody and ultimately show that the evidence has remained intact during the retention cycle, prosecutors need service providers who can testify that the evidence offered in court is the same evidence collected or received during the sexual assault examination, to the time and date the evidence was received or transferred to another authorized provider, and that there was no tampering with any item while it was in custody. Taking a look at the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 28, subsection 90.2, definitions, the term forensic medical examination means an examination provided to a victim of sexual assault by medical personnel to gather evidence of a sexual assault in a manner suitable for use in a court of law. Forensic evidence, which includes forensic photos and video, must be sequestered away from health records in order to preserve the legal chain of custody. To better understand the difference between forensic evidence and electronic medical records, we will now take a look at the retention destruction life cycle for electronic medical records. On average, most states have a 5 to 10 year retention policy for electronic medical records. The 4 stages of the EMR/EHR life cycle are creation of the EMR/EHR, utilization of the EMR/EHR for diagnosis, treatment, and follow-up planning, maintenance of the EMR/EHR for the duration of the required record retention, and finally, the destruction of the EMR/EHR once the retention requirement has expired. By comparison, the retention destruction life cycle for forensic evidence can have very different retention requirements than what is required for EMR/EHRs. In the life cycle for retention destruction of forensic evidence, once forensic evidence is gathered during a sexual assault exam, that evidence will be retained and maintained under a legal chain of custody for an indefinite period of time. Access to the forensic evidence is only granted to authorized users, and those users will document their access in the legal chain of custody prior to accessing it. Forensic evidence may also need to be retained well past the 5 to 10 years required for most EMR EHRs. Forensic evidence that is kept within an EMR EHR will be at risk of entering the destruction cycle long before it is needed for use in court. In conclusion, medical break glass policies grant immediate access to restricted EHR EMR users through an EHR EMR data distribution system that documents access after the fact. A legal chain of custody prevents access until access is pre-requested, pre-challenged, pre-justified, and then pre-confirmed before access is granted to any forensic evidence collected during a forensic medical exam. Implementing a medical break glass policy in place of a legal chain of custody process directly disrupts the lawful succession of access and control of the evidence collected. Using a medical break glass policy in place of a legal chain of custody process creates a legally defensible reason to have evidence excluded within a criminal court setting. Forensic evidence collected during a forensic medical examination should be kept separate from EHR, EMRs to preserve the legal chain of custody as it is required by law.